Have you ever wondered what secrets lie buried in the pages of history? What if I told you that some of the most famous stories we know are filled with mysteries, betrayals, and genius far beyond their time? Today, we peeling back the layers of time to explore 5 incredible historical enigmas that continue to captivate us. From the legendary last pharaoh of Egypt to a lost Roman legion that vanished without a trace. Get ready for a journey into the past like you've never seen before. Let's start with a name that echoes through eternity. Cleopatra. She wasn't just the last pharaoh of Egypt. She was a brilliant political strategist, a master of languages, and a commander who held the fate of an empire in her hands, often portrayed simply as a seductress. The real Cleopatra was a formidable ruler fighting to preserve her kingdom against the encroaching power of Rome. Her story isn't just one of romance with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. It's a tale of power, ambition, and a desperate struggle for survival. She commanded navies, negotiated treaties, and ruled with an intellect that rivaled any man of her era. But the biggest mystery remains her final resting place. Despite centuries of searching, the tomb of Cleopatra and her beloved Mark Antony has never been found. Where does the legendary queen lie? It's a secret that Egypt still holds close. A final, tantalizing puzzle from the ancient world. From the sands of Egypt, we traveled to the heart of Rome on a day that forever altered the course of history. The Ides of March, 44 BC. This was the day Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the world, was assassinated. We all know the story. A group of senators, including his once trusted friend Brutus, cornered him in the Senate and ended his life. But this wasn't just a simple murder. It was a carefully plotted conspiracy, born of fear and jealousy. Caesar's ambition to become dictator for life was seen as a threat to the Roman Republic. The conspirators called themselves the Liberators, believing they were saving Rome from tyranny. The irony, his death didn't save the Republic. Instead, it plunged Rome into a series of brutal civil wars that ultimately led to the rise of his heir, Augustus, and the birth of the Roman Empire. The betrayal by Brutus, immortalized by Shakespeare's words, "Et tu, Brute," has become the ultimate symbol of treachery. It serves as a chilling reminder that in the game of power, the deadliest threat often comes from those you trust the most. Now, let's leap forward in time to the Renaissance, a period of explosive creativity and innovation. And at its very center stood a man who seemed to have come from the future, Leonardo da Vinci. We know him as the painter of the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. But painting was just one of his many, many talents. Leonardo was an inventor, a scientist, an engineer, an anatomist, a true Renaissance man. His notebooks are filled with incredible designs for machines that were centuries ahead of their time. We're talking about flying machines that resemble modern helicopters, armored tanks, scuba diving gear, and even robotic knights. He meticulously studied human anatomy, dissecting bodies to understand how we work, producing drawings so accurate they could still be used in medical textbooks today. He saw the world not just for what it was, but for what it could be. How could one man possess such a vast and varied genius? Was he simply a product of his time, or was he something more? Leonardo's mind remains one of history's most brilliant and beautiful mysteries. Returning to the Roman Empire, we confront a puzzle that has baffled historians for 2,000 years. The mystery of the missing 9th Legion. Legio IX Hispana was one of Rome's most seasoned and elite legions. They fought in Gaul with Caesar and conquered Britain. Around the year 120 AD, they were stationed in the north of Britain, at what is now York. And then Tibanized, an entire legion of over 5,000 battle-hardened soldiers seemingly disappeared from the historical record. What happened to them? One popular theory is that they marched into the mists of Caledonia, modern-day Scotland, to quell a rebellion, and were completely wiped out by the fierce northern tribes. It's a romantic and dramatic image. Other historians suggest they might have been transferred to another part of the empire and were later destroyed in a different conflict, perhaps in the east. But with no definitive records, the fate of the 9th Legion remains one of the Roman Empire's most haunting ghost stories. An entire legion of Rome's finest, gone, leaving only silence and speculation in their wake. Finally, we sail into the cold, dark waters of the North Atlantic on the night of April 14th, 1912. This is the story of the Titanic, the unsinkable ship that met a tragic end on its maiden voyage. The basic story is well known. It hit an iceberg and sank, resulting in a devastating loss of life, but the reality is far more complex than the myths. For instance, it wasn't just about the ship being unsinkable. Many factors contributed to the disaster. The radio operators were overwhelmed with private messages from wealthy passengers, and may have missed crucial iceberg warnings from other ships. The lookouts in the crow's nest didn't have binoculars, which could have helped them spot the iceberg sooner. And then there's the controversy over the lifeboats. There were not enough for everyone on board, a tragic flaw in the regulations of the time. Even the ones they had were launched half empty in the initial chaos. The story of the Titanic is not just a tale of a ship hitting an iceberg. It's a story of human error, class divides, hubris, and incredible acts of heroism and sacrifice. It's a powerful lesson that technology is only as good as the people who operate it, and that overconfidence can have fatal consequences. From the political intrigue of ancient Egypt to the tragic grandeur of the Titanic, history is not just a collection of dates and facts. It's a tapestry woven with human drama, unsolved mysteries, and timeless lessons. These stories remind us that the past is alive, constantly challenging us to look closer and question what we think we know. History isn't just dates and famous battles. It's full of whispers, lost secrets, and forgotten heroes. What if I told you that some of the greatest inventions we use today might have actually been invented thousands of years ago, only to be lost to time? Let's dive into the hidden pages of history. Imagine this: a device from ancient Greece, a complex system of gears and dials, so advanced it could predict eclipses and track the movements of the planets. This isn't science fiction. It's the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck and dating back over 2,000 years. It's often called the world's first analog computer. Think about that. While the Roman Empire was at its peak, someone was building a machine with a level of mechanical sophistication that wouldn't be seen again for over 1,000 years. How did they do it? And what other incredible technologies might have vanished beneath the waves or sands of time? Another mystery from the ancient world is Greek fire. This was a legendary weapon used by the Byzantine Empire, an incendiary liquid that could burn on water and was nearly impossible to extinguish. Ships would be engulfed in flames, and enemy fleets would be decimated. The exact recipe was a closely guarded state secret, passed down through generations of emperors. But somewhere along the line, the formula was lost. We have theories, of course. Maybe it was a mixture of pine resin, naphtha, and sulfur. But to this day, no one has been able to perfectly replicate it. It's a powerful reminder that not all progress is a straight line. Sometimes, knowledge can be lost forever. Speaking of lost knowledge, let's talk about the Great Library of Alexandria. This wasn't just a building with a few scrolls. It was the intellectual heart of the ancient world, a place where scholars from across civilizations gathered to study everything from astronomy to philosophy. It's said to have housed hundreds of thousands of scrolls containing the collective wisdom of humanity. But what happened to it? The story isn't as simple as a single, catastrophic fire. The library's decline was a gradual process, spanning centuries of political instability, budget cuts, and multiple fires. The final loss is a tragedy of unimaginable scale. How many plays by Sophocles? How many scientific treatises by Archimedes? How many historical records were lost forever? We'll never know what secrets about our past were turned to ash. But history isn't just about lost objects. It's also about stories we thought were just myths. For centuries, people spoke of a great city called Troy, the site of the legendary Trojan War described in Homer's Iliad. Most scholars dismissed it as pure fiction, a grand tale of gods and heroes. Then, in the 1870s, an amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann began digging in modern-day Turkey. Against all odds, he uncovered the ruins of a massive ancient city, complete with fortified walls that matched Homer's descriptions. He found layers upon layers of cities built on top of each other, and one of them showed signs of a violent conflict right around the time the Trojan War was said to have happened. The myth, it turned out, was rooted in a very real place. It makes you wonder how many other legends have a grain of truth waiting to be discovered. Similarly, Have you heard of the Vikings reaching North America long before Columbus? For a long time, this was just a saga. A story passed down through generations. But then, in the 1960s, archaeologists discovered a Norse settlement at Lonzo Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada. They found the remains of timber-framed turf buildings, iron nails, and artifacts that were unmistakably Viking. The evidence was clear. Around the year 1000, nearly 500 years before Columbus set sail, Vikings had crossed the Atlantic and built a life on a new continent. A myth had become historical fact. Now, let's turn the page to some of history's unsung heroes, particularly the women whose contributions were often overlooked or credited to men. We all know about Albert Einstein, but have you heard of Mileva? She was his first wife and a brilliant physicist in her own right. They studied together, and the early letters are filled with discussions of physics, including the very ideas that would become the theory of relativity. Some historians argue that she was a significant collaborator on his groundbreaking 1905 papers, yet her name appears nowhere on them. Her contributions were buried, a casualty of the scientific community's bias at the time. Or how about Rosalind Franklin? Her work was absolutely crucial to understanding the structure of DNA. Using a technique called X-ray crystallography, she captured a stunningly clear image, known as Photo 51, which revealed the double helix shape. This photo was shown to her competitors, James Watson and Francis Crick. Without her permission, it gave them the final clue they needed. They rushed to publish their model and later received the Nobel Prize. Franklin's name was mentioned only as a footnote. She died before the prize was awarded, and her pivotal role in one of the 20th century's greatest discoveries was nearly erased from the story. History is also shaped by forces much larger than any single person. Let's look at how climate change has altered the course of civilizations. Take the Maya civilization in Central America. For centuries, they built magnificent cities, developed complex calendars, and thrived. Then, around 900 AD, their society collapsed. Cities were abandoned, and the population plummeted. For a long time, the cause was a mystery. But recent studies of lakebed sediments and climate data have revealed a devastating answer. A series of prolonged, severe droughts. The climate shifted, rains failed, and the agricultural system that supported their entire civilization fell apart. It has a sobering tale about how vulnerable even the most advanced societies can be to changes in their environment. It happened elsewhere, too. The Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia, considered by some to be the world's first empire, also collapsed suddenly around 4,200 years ago. Evidence again points to an abrupt climate event, a massive, centuries-long drought that turned fertile plains into dust. The very foundation of their power, their agricultural wealth, was swept away by a change in the weather. These aren't just stories from the distant past. They are powerful lessons. They show us that history is a complex tapestry woven from invention, myth, individual brilliance, and massive environmental forces. There are so many more stories like these, hidden just beneath the surface of the history we think we know. Each one challenges our perspective and reminds us that the past is a living, breathing thing, full of surprises. What other secrets are still out there, waiting to be uncovered? What will future generations discover about our own time? Ever wondered how a single event can change the world forever? From the cries for liberty on the streets of Paris to the muddy trenches of World War I, history is filled with epic turning points. Today, we're diving deep into 5 of the most impactful revolutions and battles that didn't just alter maps, but reshaped the very way we think, live, and govern. Let's start with the French Revolution. Picture this: late 18th century France, a society simmering with discontent. The vast majority of people, the Third Estate, were starving and crushed by taxes, while the monarchy and nobility lived in unimaginable luxury. The air was thick with ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The storming of the Bastille in 1789 wasn't just about tearing down a prison. It was a symbolic act of defiance against centuries of oppression. This revolution wasn't a single battle, but a chaotic, decade-long struggle that saw the rise and fall of radical factions, the reign of terror, and ultimately, the end of the absolute monarchy in France. It sent shockwaves across Europe, proving that the people, when united, could dismantle the old order and forge a new destiny. The French Revolution became a powerful blueprint for future uprisings, and its ideals still resonate in democracies around the world. Across the Atlantic, another revolution was brewing. The American Revolution was a different kind of fight. It wasn't about overthrowing a king on home soil, but about a group of colonies breaking away from the world's most powerful empire. The colonists felt their rights as Englishmen were being ignored. No taxation without representation became their rallying cry. From the first shots fired at Lexington and Concord to the brutal winter at Valley Forge, this was a war of endurance and ideology, led by figures like George Washington. The Continental Army, a scrappy force of farmers and merchants, faced the might of the British Red. The Declaration of Independence in 1776 was a radical document for its time, asserting that all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With crucial help from France, the Americans secured their victory at Yorktown. The result? The birth of the United States of America, a nation founded on the principles of republicanism and individual rights, a grand experiment in self-governance that would inspire countless others. Now, let us fast forward a few decades and focus on one man who rose from the chaos of the French Revolution. Napoleon Bonaparte. For years, he dominated Europe, a military genius who seemed invincible. But every empire has its breaking point. That moment came on June 18, 1815, on a rain-soaked field in modern-day Belgium. The Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon, having escaped from exile, was back and aiming to reclaim his glory. He faced a coalition of forces led by the Duke of Wellington and the Prussian commander. The battle was a brutal, day-long slugfest. For hours, the outcome hung in the balance. French cavalry charged British squares in a desperate, heroic, but ultimately futile effort. The turning point came late in the day with the arrival of the Prussian army, which smashed into Napoleon's flank. The defeat was absolute. Waterloo wasn't just the end of a battle, it was the end of an era. It crushed Napoleon's ambitions for good and redrew the map of Europe, ushering in a period of relative peace known as the Concert of Europe. Just a century later, that peace would be shattered in the most catastrophic way imaginable. World War I, the Great War, was unlike any conflict before it. It wasn't a war of swift maneuvers, but a brutal grind of trench warfare. A complex web of alliances, nationalism, and imperial ambitions pulled the world into conflict. After the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, millions of young men were sent into a nightmarish landscape of mud, barbed wire, and machine gun fire. New technologies like tanks, airplanes, and poison gas made the battlefield more terrifying than ever. Battles like the Somme and Verdun resulted in staggering casualties for mere yards of territory. The war wasn't just fought on the Western Front, it was a global conflict that stretched from the seas to the Middle East. By the time the armistice was signed in empires had crumbled. The Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, the Russian. The world was fundamentally changed, scarred by the loss of a generation and grappling with a new political landscape that set the stage for even greater turmoil to come. And from the ashes of Germany's defeat in World War I, a dark figure emerged. Adolf Hitler was an Austrian-born corporal, embittered by the war's outcome and the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles. In the politically and economically volatile environment of post-war Germany, he found fertile ground for his extremist ideology. He was a charismatic and manipulative speaker who preyed on people's fears and resentments, promising to restore Germany's greatness, joining the small German Workers' Party. He quickly transformed it into the Nazi Party, a powerful political machine built on propaganda, intimidation, and a twisted vision of racial purity. Through a combination of political maneuvering, fiery speeches, and exploiting the weaknesses of the Weimar Republic, Hitler was appointed Chancellor in 1933. Within a short time, he dismantled democracy, eliminated his rivals, and established a brutal, totalitarian dictatorship. The story of his rise is a chilling reminder of how a society can slide into tyranny, and how one individual's ambition can lead the entire world to the brink of destruction. From the fight for liberty in France and America, to the devastating clash of empires and the terrifying rise of a dictator. These moments in history are more than just stories in a textbook. They are powerful lessons about power, ideology, human resilience, and the fragile nature of peace. They show us how ideas can be as mighty as armies, and how the actions of one generation can echo for centuries. Understanding these turning points helps us understand the world we live in today, where we dig up the past to uncover the stories you were never told in history class. Today, we re-dive in deep into some of the most fascinating lost histories and hidden facts that have shaped our world in ways you might not expect. From legendary sunken cities to accidental revolutions. Get ready to have your mind blown. Let's start beneath the waves. The story of Atlantis. The magnificent island empire that sank into the sea has captivated us for centuries. Plato described it as a marvel of engineering and power. But was it real? While Atlantis itself remains a myth, countless real cities have been lost to the water. Take the ancient city of Dwarka in India, said to be the kingdom of Lord Krishna. Marine archaeologists have actually found submerged ruins off the coast, with artifacts dating back thousands of years. It's not just one story. Flood myths are a global phenomenon. From the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the stories of indigenous peoples in the Americas. These tales might be more than just legends. They could be the collective memory of real, cataclysmic events, like the melting of glaciers at the end of the last ice age, which dramatically raised sea levels and swallowed coastal settlements worldwide. It makes you wonder what other secrets are still waiting for us on the ocean floor. Now, let's hoist the Jolly Roger and talk about pirates. When you think of pirates, you probably picture Captain Jack Sparrow with his quirky charm and swashbuckling antics. But the real golden age of piracy, from the 1650s to the 1730s, was far grittier and more complex. These weren't just chaotic rebels. Pirate ships were surprisingly democratic. Crews often elected their captains and could vote them out if they were incompetent or too tyrannical. They created their own laws, known as the Pirate Code, which outlined rules for discipline and the distribution of treasure. This was a radical idea in an era of absolute monarchies and brutal naval hierarchies. Many pirates, like Blackbeard Edward Teach, were former privateers, essentially legal pirates hired by governments to attack enemy ships. When the wars ended, thousands of skilled sailors were left unemployed, and piracy became an attractive, albeit dangerous, career path. They weren't just plundering for gold. For many, it was a fight for freedom and a better life than the harsh conditions offered in the Navy or Merchant Marine. From the high seas, we turn to a darker chapter in European history. The witch hunts. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, a wave of mass hysteria swept across the continent, leading to the persecution and execution of tens of thousands of people, mostly women, accused of witchcraft. This wasn't just random superstition, it was a perfect storm of social, political, and religious factors. The period saw immense upheaval. The Reformation was splitting the church. Climate change led to crop failures and famine, and the plague was a constant threat. In times of fear and uncertainty, people looked for scapegoats. Accusations of witchcraft became a convenient tool for settling personal grudges, seizing property, or asserting authority. The infamous Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, was a book published in 1487 that acted as a guidebook for witch hunters, legitimizing torture to extract confessions and creating a terrifying feedback loop of accusations. It's a chilling reminder of how fear and the abuse of power can lead to devastating consequences, turning neighbors against each other and communities into hunting grounds. But history isn't all dark and grim. Let's talk about one of the most important inventions ever: the printing press. Before Johannes Gutenberg perfected his movable type press around 1440, books were rare and incredibly expensive. Each one had to be painstakingly copied by hand, by scribes, a process that could take months or even years. Knowledge was a luxury reserved for the clergy and the wealthy elite. The printing press changed everything. Suddenly, information could be duplicated quickly and cheaply. The Bible was one of the first books Gutenberg printed, and its widespread availability helped fuel the Protestant Reformation, as people could now interpret the scriptures for themselves. But it went far beyond religion. Scientific ideas, political pamphlets, and classic literature spread like wildfire across Europe, sparking the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. It created a more literate public, democratized knowledge, and laid the foundation for the modern world of mass communication. Without the printing press, the world we live in today would be unrecognizable. Finally, let's look at how sheer luck and bizarre accidents have shaped major historical events. You'd be surprised how often history turns on a dime because of a mistake or a coincidence. For example, the discovery of penicillin, the world's first antibiotic, happened because Alexander Fleming went on vacation and left a petri dish out by mistake. When he returned, he found that mold had contaminated the dish and killed the bacteria around it. Another one, the famous Battle of Trenton during the American Revolution. George Washington's surprise attack was successful, partly because the Hessian defenders were caught completely off guard, allegedly celebrating Christmas with a little too much drink. How about the invention of the microwave oven? An engineer named Percy Spencer was working on radar technology when he noticed a chocolate bar in his pocket had melted. He experimented with popcorn and an egg which exploded, and soon the microwave oven was born. From the accidental discovery of X-rays to the fortunate survival of key historical figures, it's fascinating to see how much of our history is not the result of grand plans, but of simple, unpredictable, and sometimes clumsy moments of chance. So there you have it, a whirlwind tour through sunken cities, real pirates, dark hysterias, and world-changing accidents. The past is a vast and complex tapestry, woven with threads of myth, tragedy, innovation, and pure luck. The official version of history is often just the beginning of the story. The more we dig, the more we find these hidden narratives that are just as important, and often way more interesting. What are some of your favorite hidden histories? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you next time. Have you ever felt like there's more to history than what we learned in school? Like there are entire chapters missing, full of secrets and stories just waiting to be uncovered? Well, today we're diving deep into some of the most fascinating lost histories and hidden facts that will make you see the past in a whole new light. Let us start with a mystery that has captivated imaginations for centuries. Lost cities hidden beneath the waves. The most famous, of course, is Atlantis. Plato described it as a mighty naval power that sank into the ocean in a single day and night of misfortune. Was it a real place, or just a philosophical tale? While we haven't found Atlantis, we have found real sunken cities. Take the ancient city of Dwarka, off the coast of India, mentioned in Hindu scriptures as the magnificent kingdom of Lord Krishna. Marine archaeologists have discovered submerged ruins that could be over 9,000 years old. These discoveries, along with countless flood myths from cultures all around the world, from the story of Noah's Ark to the Epic of Gilgamesh, suggest that our ancestors may have witnessed catastrophic sea level rises that wiped entire civilizations off the map. It makes you wonder what other secrets the ocean holds. Now, let's trade the deep sea for the high seas and talk about pirates. When I say Pirates of the Caribbean, you probably picture Captain Jack Sparrow, right? But the reality was far more complex and, in some ways, even more interesting than the Hollywood version. The golden age of piracy, from roughly 1650 to 1730, was a short but explosive era. These weren't just chaotic treasure hungry brutes. Many pirate ships were surprisingly democratic. Captains were elected, and crews often voted on major decisions. They even had their own form of workers' compensation, with set payments for injuries sustained in battle. Far from being outcasts, some pirates, known as privateers, were actually hired by governments to attack enemy ships. Men like Henry Morgan were celebrated as heroes in England for raiding Spanish colonies. And it wasn't just men. Female pirates like Anne Bonny and Mary Read defied all conventions, proving they were just as fierce and capable as their male counterparts. So, the next time you think of pirates, remember, the real story is one of rebellion, radical democracy, and a surprisingly organized society on the open ocean. From the high seas, we now turn to a much darker period in history, the European witch hunt. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, a wave of mass hysteria swept across Europe and even reached colonial America. Tens of thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of witchcraft and executed. But what caused this collective madness? It wasn't just about religious superstition. It was a perfect storm of social, political, and economic anxieties. This was a time of immense change. The Reformation was splitting the church. Climate change, known as the Little Ice Age, was causing crop failures and famine, and the plague was a constant threat. In this climate of fear and uncertainty, people needed a scapegoat. The witch became the convenient target for all of society's problems. Accusations were often a way to settle personal grudges, seize property, or assert power. The authorities, both religious and secular, used the witch trials to enforce social control and eliminate those who didn't conform. It's a chilling reminder of how fear and power can combine to create devastating mass hysteria, and its lessons are still incredibly relevant today. But not all historical turning points were so dark. Let's talk about an invention that literally changed the world: the printing press. Before Johannes Gutenberg perfected his movable type printing press around 1450, books were rare and incredibly expensive. Each one had to be painstakingly copied by hand by scribes, a process that could take months or even years. Knowledge was a luxury reserved for the clergy and the wealthy elite. The printing press shattered that monopoly. Suddenly, information could be reproduced quickly and cheaply. Ideas could spread like wildfire. The Protestant Reformation, for example, was fueled by Martin Luther's 95 Theses, which were printed and distributed across Germany in a matter of weeks. Scientific discoveries, philosophical treatises, and new literature became accessible to a growing middle class. This sparked a revolution in literacy and education, paving the way for the Renaissance, the scientific revolution, and the Age of Enlightenment. It was the internet of its time, connecting minds and democratizing knowledge on a scale never seen before. It truly laid the foundation for the modern world. Finally, let's look at how sometimes history's biggest moments happen completely by accident. You'd be amazed at how many pivotal events were the result of a mistake, a coincidence, or just plain dumb luck. Take the discovery of penicillin. Alexander Fleming didn't set out to find the world's first antibiotic. He went on vacation and left a petri dish of bacteria on his lab bench. When he came back, he noticed that a mold had contaminated the dish and was killing the bacteria around it. That lucky accident saved countless millions of lives. Or what about the discovery of America by Columbus? He wasn't looking for a new continent. He was trying to find a westward route to Asia and drastically miscalculated the size of the Earth. He stumbled upon the Americas purely by mistake. Even World War I was sparked by a series of accidents and miscalculations, starting with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. A wrong turn by the Archduke's driver put him directly in the path of his assassin, an event that triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. From scientific breakthroughs like X-rays and microwaves, which were also discovered by accident, to world-changing political events, it's humbling to realize how much of our history hinges on chance. It just goes to show that the course of history is never as straightforward as it seems. From sunken cities and real-life pirates to the power of a printing press and the role of pure chance, the past is a treasure trove of incredible stories. History isn't just a collection of dates and names. It's a living, breathing narrative, full of mystery, drama, and surprising truths. What we've covered today is just the tip of the iceberg. What hidden histories fascinate you the most? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the hidden corners of history. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Have you ever wondered why World War I was called the war to end all wars? It's a phrase filled with a tragic irony that still echoes today. This war, starting in 1914, was supposed to be a final, decisive conflict that would usher in an era of lasting peace. Instead, it became a brutal meat grinder, a labyrinth of trenches where millions of young men faced unimaginable horrors. We'll delve into the stories of these soldiers, stuck in muddy, rat-infested trenches, facing machine guns, poison gas, and relentless artillery fire. It wasn't just a clash of empires. It was a deeply personal tragedy for countless families. We'll explore how a single assassination in Sarajevo could ignite a global catastrophe, pulling in nations from every corner of the world. What were the tangled alliances and political ambitions that led to this massive loss of life? And how did the promise of a war to end all wars crumble, ultimately paving the way for even greater conflicts? Let's uncover the heartbreaking story of the Great War and the generation that was lost to its trenches. Now, Let's fast forward to decades, to World War II. This conflict gave us some of the most famous battles in history, but what secrets are still hidden within them? Take the Battle of Dunkirk, for example. We all know the story of the miraculous evacuation, but did you know about the crucial rearguard actions that made it possible? Small, determined units held back the German advance, buying precious time for hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers to escape. It was a victory snatched from the jaws of absolute defeat. Then there's the Battle of Stalingrad, a turning point on the Eastern Front. We often hear about the brutal street-to-street fighting. But what about the strategic genius behind Operation Uranus? The Soviet plan to encircle and trap an entire German army. We'll look at the declassified documents and first-hand accounts that reveal the gambles, the bluffs, and the incredible acts of courage that decided the fate of these legendary battles. From the intelligence failures at Pearl Harbor to the complex deception plans for D-Day, we'll expose the secrets that were once known only to generals and spy masters. As World War II ended, a new, quieter conflict began. The Cold War. This wasn't a war fought with massive armies on open battlefields, but in the shadows, by spies and secret agents. It was an era of espionage, covert operations, and high-stakes missions that could have triggered World War III at any moment. You've heard of the CIA and the KGB, but what about the missions that have remained classified for decades? We'll tell you about the spies who lived double lives for years, stealing nuclear secrets right from under the enemy's nose. Imagine a secret agent in Moscow, receiving coded messages through radio broadcasts, constantly looking over their shoulder, knowing that one mistake could lead to their capture and execution. We'll explore daring operations like Project Azorian, where the CIA tried to salvage a sunken Soviet submarine from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean using a giant mechanical claw. These stories sound like they're straight out of a Hollywood movie, but they were very real. These were the unsung heroes and villains of a silent war, whose actions shaped the world we live in today. Let us shift our focus to another monumental event of the 20th century. The Partition of India in 1947. When the British Empire withdrew from the Indian subcontinent, it wasn't a clean break. The decision to divide the land into two independent nations, India and Pakistan, unleashed one of the largest and most violent mass migrations in human history. We'll explore the immense human cost of this political decision. Imagine millions of families, Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs who had lived together for centuries, suddenly finding themselves on the wrong side of a newly drawn border. They were forced to abandon their homes, their land, and everything they knew, embarking on perilous journeys, on foot, by train, or in ox. The journey was fraught with danger, and communal violence erupted on an unprecedented scale. We will share the personal stories of survivors, pieced together from diaries, letters, and oral histories. These are accounts of loss, of separation, and of incredible resilience in the face of chaos. How did a moment of independence and celebration turn into such a profound human tragedy? We will examine the political haste and the legacy of divide and rule that led to this catastrophic event. Finally, let us travel further back in time to explore the rise and fall of one of history's greatest empires, the Ottoman Empire. For over 600 years, this powerhouse controlled vast territories across 3 continents, from Southeast Europe to North Africa and the Middle East. At its peak under rulers like Suleiman the Magnificent, Istanbul was the center of the world, a hub of art, science, and culture. We'll explore how a small Turkish tribe grew into a global empire, conquering Constantinople and challenging the powers of Europe. We'll walk through the grand halls of Topkapi Palace, where sultans ruled and intricate court politics played out. But empires, no matter how powerful, eventually decline. What led to the downfall of the Ottomans? Was it a series of military defeats, internal corruption, or the failure to modernize in the face of a rapidly changing world? We'll analyze the slow decline from the sick man of Europe in the 19th century to its final collapse after World War I. The story of the Ottoman Empire is a sweeping epic of ambition, glory, and eventual decay, leaving behind a legacy that continues to shape the politics and culture of the modern Middle East and beyond. From the trenches of World War I to the secret operations of the Cold War, and from the rise of mighty empires to the painful birth of new nations. History is a complex tapestry of power, politics, and human drama. These stories are more than just dates and names in a textbook. They are powerful reminders of our shared past and the forces that continue to shape our present. If you found these stories as fascinating as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. History isn't just about dates and dusty books. It's a collection of powerful, often heartbreaking stories that shape the world we live in today. And some of the most dramatic stories are born from the collision of war, politics, and power. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on 5 pivotal moments in history that reveal the true cost of conflict and the complex web of human ambition. Let us start with a conflict so devastating it was called the War to End All Wars. World War I. Imagine a world in 1914, full of optimism and new technology. Suddenly, a single assassination in Sarajevo ignites a firestorm. Europe's great powers, tangled in a web of alliances, are dragged one by one into a brutal conflict. Young men, promised adventure and glory, were instead thrown into the hell of trench warfare. For 4 long years, they faced machine guns, poison gas, and endless mud. It was a war of attrition where progress was measured in inches and human lives were spent like currency. The promise of ending all wars turned into a bitter irony, as the peace treaty signed at Versailles sowed the seeds for an even greater conflict just 2 decades later. The tragedy of World War I is a stark reminder of how quickly political miscalculations can lead to unimaginable human suffering. Fast forward 20 years, and the world is once again at war. World War II was a global conflict on an even bigger scale, with battles that have become legendary. But what are the secrets behind these famous clashes? Take the Battle of Stalingrad. It wasn't just a brutal city fight, it was a psychological turning point. Hitler's obsession with capturing the city named after his rival, Stalin, led him to make disastrous strategic errors, refusing to let his army retreat even when they were hopelessly surrounded. The German Sixth Army was sacrificed for a symbol, and their defeat on the Eastern Front marked the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Then there's D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy. We often see it as a story of overwhelming force, but its success hinged on incredible deception. Operation Fortitude, a massive misinformation campaign, convinced the Germans that the main invasion would happen at Potsdam. They used fake armies, inflatable tanks, and double agents to sell the lie. So, while brave soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy, a huge portion of the German forces sat waiting for an invasion that never came. These battles weren't just won with bullets. They were won with strategy, sacrifice, and sometimes pure deception. As the fires of World War II died down, a new kind of conflict emerged: the Cold War. It was a war fought not on battlefields, but in the shadows. This was the golden age of espionage, with spies and secret missions that sound like they're straight out of a movie. Have you ever heard of the Acoustic Kitty Project? In the 1960s, the CIA genuinely tried to turn a cat into a listening device by surgically implanting a microphone and transmitter. The mission's first field test ended in disaster when the cat, acted like a cat, wandered into the street, and was hit by a taxi. Then there were the human spies, like Oleg Penkovsky, Soviet military intelligence officer who became a double agent for the UK and the US. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the intelligence he provided about the capabilities and deployment of Soviet missiles was absolutely crucial. It gave President Kennedy the confidence to blockade Cuba instead of launching an immediate military strike, potentially preventing nuclear war. Penkovsky was eventually caught and executed, a hero who paid the ultimate price. The Cold War was a silent, deadly chess game where the actions of a single individual could change the course of history. Now let's shift our focus to the Indian subcontinent and one of the most painful episodes of the 20th century, the partition of India in 1947. As the British Empire crumbled, the decision was made to divide British India into 2 independent nations, a Hindu-majority India and a Muslim-majority Pakistan. The lines were drawn hastily, cutting through villages, homes, and families. What followed was one of the largest and most violent mass migrations in human history. Hindus and Sikhs on the Pakistani side fled to India, while Muslims on the Indian side fled to Pakistan. An estimated 15 million people were displaced, and the violence that erupted led to the deaths of up to 2 million people. It was a humanitarian catastrophe born from a political decision. The scars of partition run deep, and its legacy continues to shape the politics and identity of South Asia to this day. It's a powerful story about how lines on a map can inflict deep, lasting wounds on millions of people. Finally, let us go further back in time to the rise and fall of one of history's greatest empires, the Ottoman Empire. For over 600 years, from the late 13th century until after World War I, the Ottomans controlled vast territories across Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa. At its height under Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire was a global powerhouse, a center for art, science, and culture. Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, was one of the most magnificent cities in the world. But empires, no matter how powerful, are not eternal. A combination of factors led to its long decline: military defeats, internal political decay, the rise of nationalism among its diverse peoples, and an inability to keep up with Europe's industrial and technological revolution slowly chipped away at its foundations. The empire became known as the sick man of Europe. Its final collapse after siding with Germany in World War I led to the creation of the modern Middle East, with new borders and nations drawn by European powers. The legacy of the Ottoman Empire is complex, a story of both glorious achievement and slow, painful decay, reminding us that even the mightiest structures of power can eventually crumble. From the trenches of World War I to the clandestine operations of the Cold War, and from the painful birth of modern India and Pakistan to the twilight of a 600-year-old empire, these stories show us the profound impact of war, politics, and power. They are cautionary tales, full of lessons about ambition, ideology, and the enduring human cost of conflict. History is not just the past. It's a living narrative that continues to influence our present and future. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through some of history's most pivotal moments. If you found this fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. Have you ever wondered what really brought down the mighty Roman Empire, or how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids without modern technology? What if I told you the Silk Road was about much more than just silk? And could you really understand World War II or the Cold War in just a few minutes? Stick with me, because we're about to dive into 5 of the most epic stories in human history, all in one video. This is history like you've never seen it before. Let's start with a giant, the Roman Empire. For centuries, it was the center of the world, a powerhouse of military might, engineering genius, and cultural influence. From the Colosseum's roar to the aqueducts that fed 1 million people, Rome seemed eternal. So, what happened? Why did this seemingly invincible empire crumble? Well, it wasn't one single thing. It was like a perfect storm. Imagine this. Barbarian invasions were hammering the borders, not just once, but over and over again. Goths, Vandals, Huns, they all took a piece. Internally, the empire was a mess. Political instability was rampant, with emperors being assassinated left and right. The economy was in shambles, crippled by overspending, inflation, and heavy taxes that crushed the common people. And then there were social problems. A plague swept through, wiping out a huge chunk of the population. Some historians even point to things like lead poisoning from their water pipes. It was a slow, painful decline, a death by 1,000 cuts. The fall of Rome wasn't just an event. It was a long, complicated process that teaches us a powerful lesson. No empire, no matter how great, is forever. It's a chilling reminder of how fragile even the mightiest civilizations can be. Now, let's travel back even further in time, to the land of pharaohs and golden sands. We're talking about ancient Egypt and its most iconic mystery: the pyramids, specifically the Great Pyramid of Giza. This thing is a masterpiece. It stood as the tallest man-made structure on Earth for over 3,800 years. It's made of more than 2 million stone blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons. That's like 12 elephants. The big question is, how did they do it? They didn't have cranes, They didn't have steel. They didn't have power tools. The secrets are slowly being revealed through archaeology. It seems they were brilliant engineers and project managers. They likely used a system of ramps, both straight and spiral, to hold the massive stones upwards. They used wet sand to reduce friction, allowing them to slide the heavy sleds carrying the blocks. And who built them? It wasn't slaves, as Hollywood often suggests. It was a dedicated, well-fed workforce of skilled laborers who lived in a nearby city. They were respected for their craft. The precision of the pyramids is mind-boggling. The sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions. The pyramids weren't just tombs. They were complex machines, designed to launch the pharaoh's soul into the afterlife. They are a timeless monument to human ingenuity and the power of a shared vision. From the deserts of Egypt, let's journey east along one of the most famous trade routes in history, the Silk Road. When you hear Silk Road, you probably think of caravans of camels, carrying luxurious silk from China to Europe. And you're not wrong, but that's only a tiny part of the story. The Silk Road wasn't a single road. It was a vast network of interconnected routes stretching over 4,000 miles. It was the world's first true superhighway of globalization. Yes, silk was a huge deal. It was so valuable it was used as currency. But what traveled along these routes was far more significant than just goods. Ideas, religions, philosophies, and technologies moved back and forth. Buddhism traveled from India to China. Christianity and Islam spread across Asia. Papermaking, gunpowder, and the Compasol Chinese inventions made their way west, fundamentally changing the world. But it wasn't all good news. The Silk Road was also a conduit for disease. The Black Death, which devastated Europe in the 14th century, is believed to have traveled along these very trade routes. The Silk Road wasn't just about trade. It was the world's first internet, connecting civilizations and shaping the course of history in ways we're still feeling today. Now, let us fast forward to the 20th century for a conflict that engulfed the entire planet. World War II. How do you condense such a massive, devastating war into a few minutes? Let's try. The causes were complex, rooted in the unresolved issues of World War I. The harsh Treaty of Versailles left Germany humiliated and economically crippled, creating fertile ground for extremist ideologies. The Great Depression made things even worse globally. In this climate of desperation, aggressive, nationalistic regimes rose to power in Germany, Italy, and Japan. The war officially began in 1939 when Hitler's Germany invaded Poland, triggering Britain and France to declare war. The conflict quickly spread, creating two main factions. The Axis powers, led by Germany, Italy, and Japan, and the Allied powers, led by Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and later, the United States. The war was fought on a scale never seen before. From the frozen steppes of Russia to the jungles of the Pacific, it saw horrific atrocities like the Holocaust and the brutal fighting on the Eastern Front. Key turning points included the Battle of Stalingrad, the D-Day landings in Normandy, and the Battle of Midway in the Pacific. The war ended in 1945, after the Allied victory in Europe and the use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The consequences were staggering. Over 70 million people died. Empires were dismantled. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as two new superpowers, and the United Nations was created in the hope of preventing such a catastrophe from ever happening again. The end of World War II didn't bring lasting peace. Instead, it gave rise to a new kind of global struggle. The Cold War. This was a battle without bullets, at least not direct ones between the main players. It was an ideological war, a tense standoff between two superpowers with completely different worldviews. The capitalist, democratic United States and the communist, totalitarian Soviet Union. For over 4 decades, the world held its breath. The conflict was fought through proxy wars in places like Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan, where each superpower backed a different side. It was a war of spies, propaganda, and technological competition, famously symbolized by the space race to put a man on the moon. The biggest fear was nuclear annihilation. Both sides built up massive arsenals of nuclear weapons, leading to a doctrine known as mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The idea was that if one side launched its nukes, the other would retaliate, and both would be destroyed. It was a terrifying balance of power. The world came dangerously close to nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The symbol of the Cold War's division was the Berlin Wall, a concrete barrier that split a city and a continent. The conflict finally began to thaw in the late 1980s, culminating in the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. The Cold War shaped the political map of the world we live in today, and its legacy of geopolitical tension can still be felt. From the fall of empires to the dawn of the nuclear age, history is a breathtaking and often humbling story of human triumphs and tragedies. Each of these events, separated by centuries and continents, are connected threads in the incredible tapestry of our shared past. Understanding them helps us understand ourselves and the world we live in today. I hope this journey through time has sparked your curiosity to learn even more. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the past. Let me know in the comments which historical topic you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered what the world was like long before the pyramids were built, or even before the first cities emerged? Let's travel back in time, over 12,000 years, to a place that's rewriting human history. This is Göbekli Tepe. In modern-day Turkey, the world's oldest known temple. Imagine this: massive carved stone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in intricate circles. These weren't built by farmers or city dwellers, but by hunter-gatherers. For decades, we thought monumental architecture came after agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe flips that idea on its head. It suggests that a shared, complex system of beliefs, a religion, might have been the very thing that brought people together to form the first settled communities. What did these ancient people worship? The pillars are covered with stunning reliefs of animals: foxes, lions, snakes, and vultures. Some experts believe these might represent cosmic symbols or spiritual guardians. Others think it was a ritual center, perhaps for funeral rites, as many human bones were found nearby. The sheer scale and artistry are mind-boggling for its time. It took hundreds of people, organized and working together, to quarry, transport, and erect these stones, all without metal tools or the wheel. What drove them to undertake such a colossal project? Was it a celestial observatory? A pilgrimage site? The mysteries of Göbekli Tepe are profound. It forces us to ask, did religion spark the agricultural revolution, and not the other way around? This ancient site is more than just ruins. It's a testament to the deep-seated human need for meaning and connection, a need that has shaped our world from its very dawn. Now, let us journey forward a few millennia to the 6th century BCE, and witness the rise of a true global superpower, the Persian Empire. At its peak, this empire was the largest the world had ever seen, stretching from the Balkans in Europe to the Indus Valley in India. But how did it grow so vast, so quickly? The story begins with a visionary leader, Cyrus the Great. Unlike many conquerors of his time, Cyrus was known for his tolerance and respect for the cultures he brought into his empire. Instead of destroying cities and forcing his beliefs on people, he allowed them to keep their customs and religions. This brilliant strategy won him loyalty and stability, turning conquered peoples into willing subjects. But it wasn't just about enlightened leadership. The Persians were master engineers and administrators. They built the Royal Road, an incredible ancient highway over 1,600 miles long, complete with postal stations that allowed messengers to travel from one end of the empire to the other in just 7 days, a speed unheard of at the time. This network connected the empire, facilitating trade, communication, and the movement of troops. They also standardized weights, measures, and coinage, creating a thriving common market that fueled the empire's wealth. The Persian military, featuring the legendary Immortals, an elite, heavy infantry force of 10,000 soldiers, was a formidable power that expanded and defended the empire's borders, from Darius the Great's administrative genius to their advanced infrastructure. The Persian Empire wasn't just built on conquest, It was built on a revolutionary model of multicultural governance that set a new standard for what an empire could be. Next, let's turn to a story that has captivated imaginations for thousands of years. The Trojan War. Was it a real historical event, or just a masterful piece of fiction spun by the poet Homer? For centuries, scholars dismissed the Iliad as pure myth, a 10-year war fought over a kidnapped queen, Helen of Troy, involving gods, goddesses, and larger-than-life heroes like Achilles and Hector. It all sounded too fantastic to be true. But then, in the 1870s, a German amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann made a discovery that changed everything. Following clues from the Iliad, he began digging at a site in Turkey called Hasar. There, he unearthed the ruins of a great Bronze Age city, complete with massive walls and evidence of a violent destruction right around 1200 BCE, the time the Trojan War was said to have occurred. Was this the legendary Troy? The archaeological evidence is tantalizing. We've found multiple layers of the city, one of which, known as Troy VI, shows clear signs of fire and warfare. We've also found arrowheads and skeletons. This suggests a major conflict did take place. However, the archaeology doesn't match Homer's epic in every detail. There's no proof of a 10-year siege or a giant wooden horse. Many historians now believe the Trojan War was likely a real conflict, perhaps a series of raids or a trade war over control of the strategic Dardanelles Strait. Homer then took the kernel of this historical truth and wove it into a grand, mythological epic. So, while the Trojan War probably didn't happen exactly as the poets told it, the legendary city of Troy was very real, and its story is a fascinating blend of history, archaeology, and myth. From the world of epic poetry, let us march into the heart of one of the most unique and formidable societies in history, ancient Sparta. When you think of Sparta, you probably picture King Leonidas and his 300 warriors at Thermopylae, the ultimate symbol of discipline and courage. And you wouldn't be wrong. Spartan society was entirely built around one goal: creating the perfect soldier. From the moment they were born, Spartan lives were dedicated to the state. Unhealthy infants were left to perish. At age 7, boys were taken from their families and entered the Agoge, a brutal state-sponsored training program. They were taught to endure pain, hunger, and hardship. They were given little food to encourage them to steal, and were punished not for stealing, but for getting caught. Their education focused on warfare, discipline, and absolute loyalty to Sparta. Life for Spartan women was also unique. Unlike other Greek women who were confined to the home, Spartan women were educated, owned land, and were expected to be physically fit. Their primary role was to bear strong sons for the army, but their relative freedom and influence were unheard of in the ancient world. This entire system was made possible by the Helots, a subjugated population of serfs who farmed the land and handled all labor, freeing up Spartan citizens to focus solely on military pursuits. For about 300 years, this warrior society dominated Greece, but its rigid structure was also its downfall. Constant warfare and a low birth rate eventually dwindled their numbers, leading to their decline. Sparta remains a powerful example of a society that took the ideals of duty and sacrifice to the absolute extreme. Finally, let's uncover the truth behind another legendary group of warriors: the Amazons. For centuries, we've heard tales of a mythical nation of fierce female fighters who lived without men. The ancient Greeks wrote about them extensively, describing them as skilled archers and horsewomen who battled heroes like Heracles and Achilles. For a long time, just like the Trojan War, these stories were dismissed as pure fantasia, Greek invention to explore ideas about gender and civilization versus barbarism. But what if the legends were based on real women? For decades, archaeology is telling us they were in the vast steppes of Eurasia, from the Black Sea to modern-day Kazakhstan. Archaeologists have been uncovering ancient burial mounds, called kurgans, belonging to the Scythians, nomadic peoples who thrived around the same time as the ancient Greeks. Inside these tombs, they expected to find male warriors buried with their weapons. But DNA analysis has delivered a shock. A significant number of these warrior graves, maybe as many as 1 in 3, belong to women. These weren't just any women. They were buried with bows, arrows, spears, and axes. Many of their skeletons show battle wounds, like arrowheads embedded in bone, proving they fought and died in combat. These Scythian warrior women were expert riders and archers. Living a nomadic lifestyle on the harsh plains meant that everyone, men and women, had to be able to defend the tribe and hunt. They weren't a society of only women, as the myths claimed, but they were real-life warrior women who likely inspired the Greek legends of the Amazons. The real history of these women is even more fascinating than the myth. From the world's first temple to the real-life Amazons, ancient history is filled with incredible stories that continue to challenge what we think we know about the past. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the mysteries of our ancient world. See you next time.